What would happen in a major nation state now if we lost electricity? Not for 12 hours, but for an indefinite period of time. I would argue that in the United States, if it was indefinite and it was major areas, that you'd have a breakdown in social order very, very quickly. Right now, we do have power outages, but there is this confidence that they will be restored pretty quickly. And so even though certain select areas will go longer, there is this just absolute belief that we're going to come in with things, we're going to get it back up. And so maybe a couple of days and you'll be good. If it was absolutely a question mark, I think people in many cases would go into the survival mode and they would do those things that they think are commensurate with protecting their family or their tribe. And I think we'd see the breakdown in social order much faster than we want to believe. And that kind of thing worries me a lot.
And just on that point, because you've made the case in On Character that there is this perhaps erosion of character that we've seen. And I've been really curious, and just to tie this into this point, for something like that to happen, for a power outage to really spark that kind of really civil disobedience, that frightening civil disobedience. And if perhaps we strip that back and we look at, we tie that into this erosion of character, what are perhaps the most kind of concerning aspects through there? And do you see that erosion of character at the level of the individual, or is it more at the institutional level that could give rise to something as serious as perhaps, that civil disobedience there?
Yeah. I think it's both. If we start at the individual level, we are all raised. I think we learn character. I don't think we're born with character. You learn it from parents and examples and things you read and whatnot. And it becomes a set of rules or habits for most people who have a certain level of character, and it's things they do and things they don't do. Often it's got a religious base to it, 10 Commandments or other religious guidance, but it's always based around a set of norms that says, this is how I should conduct myself. When you join the military, of course, we know they start on day one, they cut your hair off, they take your name away, they give you new clothes. They do all of those things to try to change who you are so that you see yourself as a part of a greater whole, a team, so that you accept new norms. And most people who enter the military, interestingly enough, the first time they go home to visit their parents, people say, well, you stand up so much straighter. You speak more directly. It's a number of things. And most of us, when we're in that, we start to take pride in those, and they start to define how we see ourselves. And so on the individual level, it is establishing an identity with a set of personal expectations that are very, very important. We've got this era where we say it is okay to be a scoundrel as long as you just tell people I'm a scoundrel. And instead of people, rejecting you, they go, oh, Stan's a scoundrel. All right. Isn't that nice? And I find that extraordinary, because you don't need many scoundrels in your group before you got a real problem. On the societal level, I think you just expand that, because society used to have norms. Well, and I don't want to say there was the good old days, because they were never that good. But the reality is, when you have a society that has norms that says we don't do certain things, you call it, we don't litter, we don't kill, we don't steal. Suddenly you've got the ability for society to have rules that people can live with and feel secure, they can interact and whatnot. Once you allow those to erode, then suddenly everybody is forced into sort of the survival mode. Because if my property is not protected by the fact that we don't allow stealing in society, I've got to protect it all the time. I've literally got to defend my whatever I have. So I think we've let society's ideas of what character is, a societal level of character, conduct. I think we've allowed that to erode to an era that I think has cost us. And we did part of it not in bad intentions. We said, well, we want to let everybody be themselves. We don't want to tell people how to act. But in a full sense, you have to tell people, there have to be rules in how people act.